Hi, we are very excited today because we're going to be talking about fidgets and stress balls and, of course, the infamous fidget spinners. I'm Dr. Lori Evans. I'm a psychologist here at the NYU Child Study Center. I'm joined by Samantha Busa, who is on faculty here on our anxiety and mood disorder service and gender service. But our special guest, most important, is Jaden Gilmore. Jaden is going into the 5th grade. And his best comment about what we're going to talk about today, when we laid out all these fidgets and spinners, what did you say to me?
There's 100 things that you can get in trouble in school.
Right. So we now are going to talk about 100 ways not to get in trouble with fidgets at school. But definitely a good point.
We know this is a really hot topic in terms of going back to school and do I have my kid bring, fidgets to school? Do I not? So you can submit questions at any time during the course of our webinar today. You can type them into the questions pane of the control panel, and we will be handed a handy-dandy iPad with those questions on them. And so we'll be happy to answer this at the end of our presentation. So why don't we jump into it?
All right. So, I think the real point that we want to start off with is that we all fidget. We all do. I'm playing with one of our fidgets right now. It's a natural, normal thing to do. Jaden, what are you fidgeting with right now?
A pencil.
How normal is that in class?
Really normal.
Does everybody okay. So what are some of the other normal things? Do you also, look, he's doing it. He's just on cue. He's
doodling.
Doodling, right?
Yeah, so we see people in meetings every single day doodling on the sides of their paper, finger or toe tapping. So,
do you ever do that?
Sometimes.
Sometimes? Okay. And then the old hair twirling. How many times have we seen this in class, right? Do you ever do that, Jaden? You don't have very long to do. All right, not one of your favorites.
When I have curly hair, yeah.
When you have curly hair. Okay, so again, a normal, natural thing, and movement is. And sometimes as we go into classrooms, what we realize is classes get longer, days get longer. It is very hard for even neurotypical kids to sit still the entire time. So providing movement is essential, and that's why we have recess and things like that. But there are times kids have to sit. So we're trying to figure out whether we need to help out.
Yeah.
So people ask us, because we're the Child Study Center, is there any real evidence for this? Is there research evidence that says these things can work? The truth is there's very little research or evidence that these kind of sensory things or sensory interventions are significantly helpful. That said, part of it is we need to do better studies, we need to understand it better, because many things that we use, and we'll talk about this as we talk about individual things, kind of go along with other things we're teaching. So for years, clinicians, occupational therapists, teachers have known that fidgets can be helpful or stress balls can be helpful. So all right, I'll let you talk about anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the anxiety realm of things, we know that relaxation is a really important tool. Jaden, you actually, what did you do right before we went on the air that we talked about?
We played the ball.
And you took a really big deep breath.
Yes.
Did that help you calm down at all?
Yes.
Yeah, so we think about relaxation as deep breathing. We think of it as muscle relaxation, so tensing and relaxing our muscles. We think about fidgeting even just sort of distracting us. And so for kids who are feeling anxious, maybe, what might they do?
Right, so you can pick up ones that if you're stressed, you might use.
I would use this one.
What was the other one you picked up before too? Yeah, what did you use? Squeeze it really hard. We know that there's really good evidence to sort of calm the body down, relax the body from tenseness, which is when we feel anxious, we feel pretty tense. Tensing and relaxing those muscles can really help calm someone down. And so stress balls can be really great for that and can remind you to sort of calm yourself down and distract you from those anxious thoughts as well. So we know that this is something that has some evidence, right? There is evidence that relaxation can help anxiety, but we don't know if it's really the fidgets, and maybe it's picking the appropriate ones to help that work.
Right. When you think about it, it's a tool where Jaden was really good. He just naturally, we weren't telling him to take a deep breath. We weren't telling him to pick up the stress ball. He just did it normally and naturally. Sometimes the kids we work with don't know to do those things naturally. And that's why sometimes the stress balls, the other things, kind of just remind them. And maybe you're motivating, right? If you had some of this stuff in your classroom, is it motivating to play with it?
Yes.
Are you tempted? Yeah. Okay. So there's definitely a motivation. So when we think about it, and I think this is where fidgets have really different from stress balls. See, even Sam just can't resist. They are irresistible sometimes. is that when we think about ADHD, this idea, there is a recent study that talks about the need for ADHD kids, even in order to improve their learning, to take in information, actually do need to move around. So that we see in classrooms, and Jaden, we were talking about before, sometimes some kids in your class have ADHD, and do they seem to need to move around more than other kids?
Yes.
Yeah. So what do they do when they have to move around?
It's mostly their hands. They put their hand movement on the desk. Because sometimes they don't have fidget
spinners, right, or something. Okay.
They just tap their fingers.
Right, so they're doing something anyway. So what we talk about is this idea that, yes, if you can let an ADHD kid sometimes stand while they're doing something or move around, that may be the best. Sometimes you can't do that. So, again, when we look at these, and we'll talk about the criteria for what is actually going to be disruptive in a classroom, Jaden, you had started off by saying 100 ways you can get in trouble in your classroom. What do you think would be the quietest one here that may not get a kid in trouble if they're playing with it?
Quietest thing that we think that probably not is this, without bouncing it.
Okay.
Or probably this, because you're only shaking it. But that was really, maybe this, because
see, there's so many,
things.
And so many things. But I think you bring up a good point, that we want kids to have something that they want to use that motivates them to use it, but doesn't distract you from the work. Jaden, did you hear what I just said? What did I say? Can you repeat it?
No.
See, so that's one of the things we'll talk about later. We want to make sure if we're using these things that kids are actually able to still pay attention and answer questions. Some of these are so entertaining that that's where the distinction between, is it a fidget that helps with the movement or a toy that in and of itself is just fun to play with. So we'll talk about how to make those distinctions.
Absolutely. So there's also, some evidence that sort of fidgets can be useful for kids with autism, kids with tics and Tourette's, and also trichotillomania. So they're actually used as replacement behaviors to sort of kind of get in the way of engaging in more stereotype motor movements. So if there's something that you can do with your hands rather than, if you have a tic maybe that has your hand move, having something to do with your hands can kind of get in the way of those tics and can actually, be part of a treatment plan. So I will often, when I work with kids with tics and Tourette's or kids with trichotillomania, to give them something to do with their hands other than sort of their tics, or if they're, pulling their hair at all. And we find this to be really useful. It's part of sort of our treatment manual to sort of be giving sort of these fidgets. We don't call them that. We just, call them sort of, I don't know.
What do we call them?
I don't know.
It's almost like a replacement.
An instrument,
right? An instrument to replace. Right. And I think that's the same with the autism, where sometimes we have these stereotype movements that kids engage in, and we've often given them something that's more socially appropriate.
Exactly.
Because when I look at Jaden, he's doing things that where I'll say, oh, kids do this. They play with things all the time. And if it helps them kind of focus on what they're doing, great. And it also doesn't look so different, I will say, one of the things Jaden keeps going back to, I love this is our shameless self-promotion, their Child Study Center brains, and we give these out. I think one of the things I do want to point out is Jaden said, even with the stress ball, I was working in an elementary school for, at a different hospital that I won't name because, and I was running a group. It was kids with ADHD, and we thought, okay, we're going to make stress balls. That way they'll be motivated. They made themselves. We got, latex balloons that are strong. We put sand in it. They made it as tight as they wanted to. We tied it nuts, and then, the period ended, so they had to go to lunch.
Right.
So they went to lunch with, Jaden, what do you think happened when I sent them to lunch with stress balls? What do you think happened in the cafeteria?
They probably took them away. Or maybe they took them outside.
Well, wait, before they took them away, why do you think, what were they doing with them that would make a teacher take them away?
Either bouncing it and throwing it.
They were throwing it. So you're right, they got to take it away. And not only that, the principal then called my office and said, Lori, if you're going to give them this, you have to teach them how to use it when and where. I learned a really important lesson. The kids did, but I did too. So that it's not just that these might be useful, but sometimes we have to teach kids about when and where.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like from your group that kids were super engaged in the activity. It was probably a really exciting time. I think about, making these calm down jars with kids, one of my favorite things to do with kids in session. because it's rewarding and exciting, but if you don't know how to use it the right way, then it's going to end up on the floor.
But even when we first started making these, we invested in mason jars, but mason jars are glass.
Yes.
So I don't know what we're thinking. And then, so we made them in mason jars, glass. Okay. Then we moved to plastic jars, but look at that. They're so entertaining that not only is, Jaden playing with it and looking at it, but I'm sure if we're in a classroom, we're all going to do that. Right. So what have we moved to?
We have moved to something even a little smaller. So I have these handy-dandy sort of test tube-like plastic containers and sort of a mini glitter jar that's more portable for at school. So you can carry it in your bag or having this at home and one of these for school.
Some teachers think this might be a pencil, so maybe one it can caught.
Well, Jaden, you said an important thing. Maybe it wouldn't get caught. The idea is that's what we're saying, that if a kid needs it, we want the teacher to know about it because we don't want to get kids in trouble, right? So we have to help teachers understand that why we're using it. There are ways to do that. So how do we teach kids, all right, to use fidget spinners or all sorts of things? We want to explain the reason for the fidget spinners so that if a kid is anxious, we're talking about this is to help you calm down. Or if they get angry and the calm down jar really works, it may be in a place in a classroom that someone goes to, or maybe it's out in the hall where they've already practiced using it in that way. So we gotta teach them. In your class, you said when the teacher takes them, does she have them in a certain box, or where does she?
She usually puts them in the desk, her desk, or on the table.
Okay.
And if it's in the middle of class, she'll just put it next to her.
Okay, so she kind of...
Yes. One day we had an incident. We have this thing called honor roll, and she took a fidget spinner away from a kid. And then somebody ended up stealing it from the teacher. So we had to figure it out.
Right.
Thank God that marking period I was in the honor roll. It's a good and a bad.
Right. So you were not accused. But we'll talk about that. Again, if our fidgets are so attractive to other people, that may be a problem. So we have to really talk about that.
And I think it's, thinking about like this right here. Did you get any schoolwork done if all of this was on your desk at school? What would you do? You'd be like, no, this was much more fun than whatever the teacher was doing.
Just put numbers on
random numbers on the
paper. Put numbers on the paper. And I worked with a classroom actually recently that I thought did such a lovely job of having a storage area for all of the fidgets. It was available to all kids, so it wasn't just sort of kids who might have ADHD, who might have anxiety. There was a section and sort of here are your fidgets, and then the teacher would actually say this would be a good time for you to go, pick something from the box. And so having something to calm down. But if you have it all on the desk, it's just not, sort of effective in any way.
And generally, we want fidgets to be largely out of sight. One of my favorites is, this is actually, I think many cultures, just like there are Guatemalan worry dolls and things like that, these are called Greek worry beads, and I'm pretty sure they're Greek, but it's great because they stay on your hands, and you're playing with them so they can't get in anybody's way. They still allow me to write and do work, and they're quiet, So again, I've seen one with leather straps that may, appeal to, but that idea of no one else is seeing that I'm doing it. It's quiet. It helps me focus.
Kids love because they don't get in trouble.
Right. No one wants to get in trouble when they're trying to learn. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think another really important part of this is really making explicit what the rules are for the use of the fidget. So if I said to you, okay, so you are able to use this fidget. The rules for the fidget are that it stays in your hands, so we're not going to throw it, and it stays under the desk during the part of class.
Okay.
Does that seem clear?
Yes.
Yes. So if I give it to you and you're doing it that way, Jaden, you're doing an awesome job using the fidget appropriately, and I can't even tell that you're doing it. But isn't it easier when someone tells you what you're supposed to do versus if I was like, here's the fidget?
Because think about it. Like, if I had this, I might, unless someone tells me that's not what it's for, Lori. Okay.
And if we have those rules, then teachers have the ability to sort of take the fidgets away if they are getting in the way of learning and have it be understood. It's not, oh, this is so unfair. Why are you taking this from me now? Sort of, it makes a little bit more sense.
I think he likes that fidget.
I know.
Okay, what did I just say?
I think you like the
See? All right. Then he was paying attention, something we're always going to ask.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we have to figure out, this is how we would assess if we've given someone a fidget. And again, actually, fidget stress balls can be included as someone's plan on a 504, an accommodation plan. They can be included in an IEP. It may be for certain subjects. It may be for certain use. So you can do that. But let's just say lots of people like to doodle. When Jaden before was holding the pencil, that's a typical student thing to do. But then teachers also want notebooks clean of doodles.
Right.
So we suggest, if we're going to do something like that there's a separate piece of paper that they have to doodle on. So things like that. So it doesn't impair, the notes that they're taking. It doesn't make a notebook look sloppy, yet they're able to do that.
Absolutely. And I think, just having a plan right now is going to make that the most effective for teachers.
We talked about this idea, too, of asking attention questions. What did I just say, Jen?
You're asking attention questions.
See, look at that. That's what I would want to know. Because if I can do that, then I know that whatever he's doing, he's still paying attention to the things that I'm saying. And if he knows that I'm going to do that, I would tell him, I'm letting you use the fidget so you can sit calmly in your seat. I'm going to ask you questions to make sure that you're paying attention, So that's great.
Yeah.
So like you said before, we're always going to have a plan of where we're going to put them when not in use, because they're little. So that if we don't know where they are, kids lose them.
Right.
So.
And I think also, making sure that if there is someone in the classroom who's using a fidget, maybe the teacher can sort of make sure other kids don't want fidgets as well. Because if it's the one kid who's having it sort of sitting by themselves, they get the really cool putty, it's going to be really frustrating for, other kids who might not be able to have access to them.
See, Jaden was paying attention. You said putty. He originally went for the putty. Right. Again, fun. I don't need stress, so we may need smaller pieces of putty. We want to make sure that the putty, if you're going to use putty, because it is one of the first kind of fidgets we have worked with, we want to make sure it is putty that is going to stick to things, that it is small enough so that it is not overly entertaining. It is just something that's in their hand.
Absolutely.
So
So here's some things when we're considering choosing a fidget. So we've spoken about a lot of these things already. First is how big the item is. So this probably is not great for in the classroom.
What do you think? Too big?
Yes.
Too big.
Because
Right, it's just like, right.
What do you think?
It's medium size.
It's medium size, and it can stay in your hand if you were going like this.
Right, and again, these are a lot put together.
Sure.
You can make them smaller, kind of like that one.
The only thing is it makes a little bit noise.
Good point, because again,
if you try to strap it back in,
right, we want to understand, so it may be helping you, but if I'm sitting next to Jaden and I'm distracted by what he's doing, right, then we're both in trouble. So we also have to make sure, just like you had said before, that if he's playing with a fidget cube, that I might say, Jaden, put the fidget cube under the desk. There we go.
Excellent.
And then I might not see it. I may hear it a little. The switch. I always wonder about that switch.
Well, that's what we're sort of wondering, like, is it quiet? Is it going to disturb another student? I worked with another classroom where the thinking putty was like a huge issue because kids were using it to snap it, so you can actually like fold it in a specific way to make a lot of noise. And so that's one thing that we want to keep in mind. Maybe it's having a rule, like if I hear the putty snap a certain number of times, then it's going to be taken away. The other thing is it a popular item? I think the reason that this webinar came about was these
What's
right
the popular item, Jaden?
Fidget spinners.
Fidget spinners, right?
And they're pretty popular. Some of them light up. They're different colors. We have a couple of different varieties here, but it's possible that another kid might want to take it or use it, or, this is really cool. Can I have it? We want to make sure that it's not going to get in the way of learning.
So in your school, were these being traded and
Yes.
Right.
Like that one right there, I traded that one.
Yeah? What'd you trade for it? Just
another fidget spinner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, ours are in the school with some of the...
that one that you have in your hand, a lot of people wanted to trade it for me because it's silver.
I like this one. It moves. But I think the other question is, does it take two hands, right? So it's really hard to do a fidget spinner unless you're like doing this, which I don't know if that's going to be helpful.
Unless you're doing this and writing at the same time, which is kind of hard because you have to balance it.
Yeah, right.
And so,
and if you're righty, then it's harder because you're not lefty.
Right.
But I feel more comfortable with my left so I'm lucky to get it right.
Yeah, but I think Jaden is making her case about fidget spinners are a great toy. They may not actually be a great therapeutic fidget.
Absolutely. And there's noise too. There's a lot of noise happening.
Because since I was in first grade, I at least had 3 ADHD kids, and they always had something to play with, or they use their fingers, and it was every day. They really couldn't help it because
they can't help it. So we went So we probably
learning could be hard for a lot of kids.
Absolutely. And the whole purpose, what we're talking about is we want to make learning better, and we want to help people concentrate as well. So it's not toys we can play with. That's fine. But in school, we want to use tools that will help you focus and concentrate. Yeah. Jane has my favorite stress. So you see it's a piece of cake. Get it? All right. Anyway.
But I think it's also important to keep in mind schools' policy. So a lot of the schools that we were working with this year had a straight-out ban on some of the fidgets. And so if you're working with a kid or you have a child who does sort of really learn better with a fidget in place, you want to make sure that you know who to talk to in the school to sort of make those exceptions. You can put them on sort of the formalized 504 plans or individualized education plans. You can put that on there so that kids have access to them, but you also want to be able to have a point person at school that you can talk to about it as well. Yeah.
My cousin, I think he's going to 4th grade. His school bans all fidgets, and he has ADHD. So it's hard for him. And one day he brought it, and they took it away from him. So he really doesn't have a chance. And their parents talked to them everything, and he couldn't. So it was really hard.
We'll have to get Sam on the case. Again, it's about working with someone where we need to find something that is private.
Noisy.
So I certainly understand schools doing it. It makes sense. And we need to take into account exceptions of when kids need it and are using it appropriately.
But kids do not think it's fair, so that's...
that's right. Kids wouldn't think it's fair. Yeah.
All right. So why don't we take some questions? I know we have some questions on the iPad.
All right. Here we go. The lid.
Okay. Question 1. What do I do if other children are disturbed or distracted by their peers who are fidgeting, tapping, etc.? So I think this is a great question. One of the things that we can do is make sure that we're picking fidgets that are as quiet as possible. So something like a stress ball might be helpful in that. I love the koosh balls.
I think the koosh balls were one of the first things we were using as fidget. It's quiet. It keeps in your hand.
It doesn't.
It doesn't bounce.
All you can do is really throw it up. But it's light, so it's gonna. Come down really quickly.
And you can use it with one hand, and I think that's what I love, that you're concerned about the other students.
The only thing is maybe you could pull the string and it might make noise.
That's true, but even that isn't so loud.
But then you could put it on your desk, maybe, or in your desk.
But think about it. I would want to teach someone how to play with it quietly. It's also a skill. So we can help kids. Or even what we said, even like the worry beads that are on, they allow you to fidget. No one else is even thinking about it because they may think it's just a bracelet that you have. So it's a matter of finding the right one. Because I think that was the issue kind of with fidget spinners as they came out, is that it was disturbing other kids, even if it was helping someone else concentrate.
And I think the other thing with these is you can turn them into sort of, I know, there are many YouTube channels where kids were sort of doing tricks with them and like balancing them on their nose and things like that. That's not something that we want to see in a classroom.
Can you do it?
Maybe.
All right. He's going to balance it on his nose this week. Whoa. All right.
Does treating anxiety change with the child's development into the teens and on? Do management and coping skills and tools change too? So I think what do you think?
Not really, because maybe it could change tools, but not really.
I like that answer because I think it's complicated in a lot of ways. I think in a lot of ways coping skills change and kids can become better at them as they're becoming older. But I do think that I work with a ton of teenagers who are even more interested in my fidgets in my office than sort of some of the younger kids, because there is something nice about having that fidget.
Teenagers could grow up with just fidgets.
Yeah, that's true.
Because some kids don't have gaming stations, which is like Xbox and PS4 or Wii. And some kids can't go outside, either because they have nothing to go outside, or sometimes you live in a bad area where your parents have to watch you, and they came from work.
Right, so it's,
it's really hard.
And also, I don't know if you've experienced this, but in my office, even though I have all these, sometimes the kids, sometimes the teenagers, but the parents and the adults. So while I think they may be able to learn more sophisticated ways of different ways of thinking, we call that in the cognitive part of treatment for anxiety, when we talk about how to calm down and we talk about breathing and relaxation and using something, I think those remain quite similar.
Absolutely, absolutely. How do objects like fidget spinners help children who are bullied integrate with other peers they don't normally interact with?
I'm not sure.
Me either.
Because, to be honest, I'm not so sure that I want to send my kid who's being bullied with a fidget spinner that could be taken or made fun of.
Yeah, some kids in my school get bullied because it's like it's a natural thing. I mean, you can't laugh at it because if the same situation happened to you, and they did it, it's not really fair. And nobody's perfect. So.
So I think I'm not so sure. I think we have other ways, and we'll be talking about that at a later webinar about bullying and how to handle that. I think sometimes we do talk about, when kids have a popular item, it's hard to be the only kid without it.
Right.
And a lot of times it's cyberbullying because you're not face to face.
It's right.
So it's your own technology. So really nobody can see it because you can delete it. But once you do something on the laptop, it can come back. Like, it takes a long time and you have to.
Oh, we may have to have him back for the bullying webinar. I think so. So I think we have other techniques and methods that we'll talk about with bullying, and it's an issue that's very near and dear to my heart about how we help kids who are being bullied. So
absolutely. All right, this will probably be our last question. Are fidgets a worthwhile tool or toy for those who do not have a medical use for them? What is the effect? If the answer is focus, then how so? Are there other ways to calm a fidgety child without medicine?
I think.
Right. I don't think in order to use fidgets effectively that you have to have a diagnosis.
No.
That said, I think what we want to do is use the things that are the most normal and natural. And that's why I think even as adults, I know many of our colleagues doodle in meetings, or they might just have a pencil in their hand, so that if this helps them focus on otherwise things that may not be so entertaining, I think it's absolutely an appropriate thing to do. Again, you have to see if it's really helping you, because some people I know when they doodle, then they don't pay attention. So that's why we always have to assess whether it's effective. We may think it is, but when we ask the attention question, they're like, what? That's not an effective tool.
Absolutely. So, what's the verdict on the favorite fidget on the table?
Hard.
Drum roll.
I think it would probably be in the fidget cube.
Okay.
You can't bounce this, but you can throw it, and it makes noise. And it really makes fun. And then the fidget cube, noise. It's too much, even under the desk.
Yeah, that's it,
This is a little more.
Right, that could be. Right, that could be a little quieter.
Or they won't get distracted by it. Because some teachers do get distracted.
Right, that's the other thing. We talked about kids getting distracted. There is a chance that it might be distracting to the teacher.
I had a Rubik's Cube, and mine had a little noise amusement. Twisting it and to solve it. And it got her distracted because, it's the noise and it's constant and it gets annoying to them.
Right.
So I kind of understand why you would want quiet.
So quieter, right. And Rubik's Cubes are going to be very engrossing. They might be a good mindful exercise because you can just focus on that, but not necessarily on the task at hand.
The one thing that girls can have fidgets is their hair.
That's true.
And that makes no noise.
That's true.
And it's a hand movement, and you can do it with any.
And you can do it with work.
That's
All right.
I guess we'll end there. So
all right.
hopefully this was helpful in kind of preparing everyone to get back to school starting in September. We're about a month away, not to remind anyone. But, we are, on behalf of the Child Study Center, we'll thank you for joining us. Once you leave the webinar, you're going to receive a survey, and we would appreciate if you could complete that for us. You will also receive a follow-up email within a day or two with a link to the recorded webinar. We hope you can join us for our next webinar with Kate Sullivan, Can I Hold Your Hand? Navigating the Dating World When You're a Teen with Autism. That's on Tuesday, August 15th at 1 o'clock. Thank you again, and bye.